All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And today is going to be a unique day. So I'm excited. Episode 36, and the featured guest is actually me. My co host today is Randy Sablick, who you can see on the screen here. And Randy, my take on Randy is that he is an expert at asking and not necessarily answering all the questions, but he knows a lot of the questions to answer or to ask, and he's going to be asking those of me. But let me tell you a little bit about Warrior versus Zombie in case you haven't joined us before or you've forgotten. As warriors, we say success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are as we move forward and providing a foundation. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I normally interview warriors. Today, I am the warrior we're going to talk about, who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and really a vision that goes generations into the future. Now, today I'm going to be telling a little of my story, and Randy Sablick is going to play my role, and he's going to tell you a little bit about me from his perspective, and then we'll do a little check in about where we're at today. So, Randy, take it away.
Thank you, David. So David is in his 50th year on his warrior journey with 45 years of business and personal transformation as his focus. He is a father, grandpa, author, speaker, podcaster, and coach. Today he's known worldwide as the Vision Warrior, and he's dedicated his life to changing the world one dream at a time and building communities of servant leaders. He's the author and creator of the Vision Challenge, the host of this podcast, Warrior versus Zombie. Dave retired in 2005 and began pursuit of his vision and impact and making a difference. Since that time, he has consulted with many for-profit and nonprofit businesses, including a 3-year stint as executive director and executive pastor. Today, he's still retired, although you wouldn't know it, living his ideal day as CEO of My Vision Warrior, co-founder of the Business Growth Network, Vision Warrior from My Wellbeing Compass, leader of Richardson Plano Networkers, founder of the Men's Breakfast Network, and founding affiliate of Be Connected. Dave, you want to just move us to next segment?
Okay, so what we're going to do is talk a little bit, Randy, about where we're at today, and I find it interesting because I often interview warriors from different parts of the country. And last episode, we had Dr. Annika Sorensen in Sweden, and it's
Yeah, that was amazing.
fascinating to hear as we're dealing with current events. How warriors are dealing with things right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. But the thing that you, Randy, you're in this Dallas marketplace, same as me, and there's a battle going on between our state and local governments now about whether we should be required to wear masks or not. So, or basically get about our regular lives. So, that's been a topic of my thinking, and I don't want to spend. You can listen to the news here in Dallas or any place else probably and hear talking heads talk about that. All I can say is that we're all on our warrior journey. There's always ups and downs, and so I'm in today's world. I kind of approach everything with the same, what I would call best principles, rather than reacting to the
Right.
particular thing at the time. And fundamentally, I believe that we all have a personal responsibility to take care of ourselves, to be, you know, my my body, my choice. In other words, determine what's best for us. As long as we're doing what we think is best, we live in a free country and those kinds of things. So I filter everything through that. I don't know how you feel about those kinds of things, but the thing is, interestingly enough, how we feel about it matters much less than, again, what it is we choose to focus on. So that's kind of the thought that I'm going through today as I think about how do I feel about having to put a mask back on and walk into some establishments, or how do I feel about one person's position on that or another. I don't know. How do you feel?
Well, the mask thing, we've talked about this one before. I believe it's my responsibility to protect myself and to protect others. So I have personally no problem. You don't have to tell me to put a mask on. I'm going to put a mask on, but I'm not going to tell other people to put a mask on. It's a personal choice. Um, and I just hope that these choices will get us the heck out of this situation soon.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the interesting thing is, I just last night had the opportunity. My three granddaughters, two of the three, the 5 and 6 year old, went to their actual school yesterday for the first time. So it was the first day of school. So that was kind of cool. And just listening to their reactions. And then when I picked up the younger one from her daycare, the 2 year old I walked in and they said, "Oh, you have to wear a mask to walk to go get her." And I said, "Well, I don't have one." They said, "I'll give you one." But I just found it really interesting as these kids seeing the level of excitement and just them being back with their friends, and just the power and the education of that. And that's one of the things when I think about impact on other people,
Right.
I think well beyond the virtue signaling or whatever I'm doing as far as wearing a mask, because I respect that. I mean, if you don't want somebody to be uncomfortable, if you want
Right.
there's really not a lot of empirical science around whether the mask really does it. It kind of makes sense that it does,
Right.
that it can have an impact, but they've never haven't done, or there are studies, but anyway.
There are some studies that say
Yeah,
yes,
and the
it has
thing
an
is,
impact.
well, they say, yeah, it slows it down, and then there's a lot of studies that nobody talks about where the impact on the negative impact, but we don't talk about that, so we're discouraged from talking. So anyway, well, you know what? I think we'll get into a little bit of kind of the relevance of this and the consistency of this. One of the things, Randy, that we talked about, and for those listening to this, is this episode, we're going to do kind of a Dave Roberts' perspective periodically as I have guests on this podcast, and we will have other guests. The main purpose of this podcast is really to focus on the guests. It's really not about me, but today it is. And in the future, as I entertain other warriors and other guests, we've had 35 so far. Then we'll be talking about things that maybe come to mind. I've had a lot of people say,
Right.
"Hey, I'd like to hear what you think about what Randy said," or whatever. So we'll take a quick break. We'll hear a little bit more for the audio audience of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There. And I'll be right back, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story with Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we're back. And thank you, Randy, again for being my co-host. And I want to now give you some insights on my story. Randy, do you have any things you'd like to encourage me to do? You know a lot of my story. You've heard various versions. Having as much story as I have, there's no way we're going to cover this in a 30-minute
Right.
podcast. So what is it you'd like to hear, Randy?
I think to put it in the context of all the things that you've talked to us about with zombies, warrior versus zombie kind of being the focus. As you tell us a little bit about your journey, if you could maybe just tell us a bit about your one or two of the biggest zombies that you've had to overcome. I think people, particularly if they're ones that the rest of us may be able to relate to.
Sure. So there's many zombies. One of the things that let me explain really in my own journey, one of the things I learned is we all are infected. Zombie isn't a negative, a pejorative. It isn't a term that I use because we all are infected. The thing is, one of the things I learned on the journey is it's the things that impact our lives along the way that if we're not careful, those things, the ones that are the most negative, can be the things that define our destiny. They can define, where we're at. So I've learned that, just thinking the same things I thought yesterday, not engaging my frontal lobe, and those things are important. And so when I think about my own journey in that context, one of the things is, Randy, you mentioned in my introduction that I retired in 2005, and that usually takes people back a little bit, because if they know me today, they say, yeah, you're not retired. And the thing is, retirement essentially is not giving up on your life purpose. In fact, if you give up on your life purpose,
You're dead.
you're dead. You got 6 year lifespan average. So back in 2005, I had a 7-digit income. I was working for a company called Accenture, traveling all over the world, put 4 million miles up to that point on airlines, have 5 kids. 4 of the 5 were still at home. One was just finishing out college. And I woke up, if you will, on a flight after flying back from, I think it was Vancouver, and I woke up and I felt like I was in a dream. I felt like it was a zombie story, in that I was going through the motions. All of a sudden, it didn't matter the size of the house, the size of the income, the size of anything. I felt like I was just going through the motions. I lost what I call peace with where I was at. And it was at that point that I decided that I was going to do whatever time I had left on the planet, making a difference first and then making money. Some people say, well, I'm not worried about making money anymore. No, that's not true. If money comes from making an impact,
Right.
then that's a beautiful thing. But what I had done prior to that, prior to quote retirement from the corporate world, was I made a lot of money, and I gave 35% of that to have an impact, to make an impact. Today, and since that time, since I've been retired, my primary purpose was to do that. So that was a major zombie in terms of overcoming maybe success. You say that doesn't sound like a bad thing. No, sometimes success, or sometimes just comfort with what you're doing, was a zombie that was in my life. So overcoming that, making that decision, was a good thing.
Well, the quest for success can sometimes be a stranglehold.
Absolutely. Or success as determined. See, the thing is, success at that juncture for me was determined by, I'm living in a 7,500 square foot house. I've got this mortgage. I've got the kids used to driving new cars, this, that, all these things, right? And those are motivation or manipulation, but it wasn't necessarily my intent. It wasn't really what I wanted out of life. I really wanted to get to the end of the day, and hopefully that's a long way off, where I could look back and say I had an impact. And
Right.
even though I did large multi-billion-dollar deals, and it was a lot of value to the people that paid my salary, and so on and so forth. Now, so I did that. And so let me fast forward real quickly, because there's another part of the story that was a major zombie. And that was that, and can be a major zombie to a lot of people. Some people say, well, I don't have $1 million income that I'm walking away from, so that's not a zombie for me. But one of the things that I encountered after that was in 2005. In 2008, just before I almost took a job with another corporation to get back into the make money first and have an impact second, that decision that I made,
Yep.
things were kind of moving kind of slow, and I'm impatient, and and I had an offer to move back into the similar type of thing with a different company. The day before I had that offer, I got a call from a pastor of the church, and saying, we need your help. Can you come? Would you? Could you? We need somebody to help turn this school around, this ministry around, from a business standpoint. Man, I'm sitting there looking at this big signing bonus and $1 million salary, and going, well,
Must have been hard.
my intention was to make a difference. So sometimes, and I'm a Christian, so God, tests you, and says, okay,
Yep.
are you really committed to this? And the bottom line is, I said yes. Okay, so that was another kind of, willing to step out of my comfort zone, willing to take something and trade something that a lot of people, again, what would people think? To tell you the truth, another zombie was it. Most people in my world at that point in my life, not my family, by the way, because my family all voted to have dad and not just have the money, in their daily lives.
Right.
The thing is, a lot of people in my career, the people that you worry about what other people think, thought I was stupid, thought I was crazy. You're at the top of your game. What are you doing? This doesn't make sense. But then I even proved them right because in 2008 I took on this role as a executive pastor and executive director of this academy, and in 2009, those of you who know what happened then, the market collapsed, banking, real estate. I lost about $3 million in real estate and stock of things, and I wasn't paying attention. Sometimes you can get on your journey and not kind of pay attention to what's going
Right.
on around you. So you talk about feeling stupid. At that point, everything that I had on paper, all the plans, sometimes they say God has, you have plans and then God laughs. So all of a sudden, I lost all this money. My home was on the block, other real estate, everything was just
Everything was on
a
the
mess.
block. Right.
And for me, having had success, that was a huge zombie. It was like, all of a sudden, all these decisions, and even though other people thought I was stupid, I knew I was right. It worked out on paper, and then all of a sudden, this major pandemic of stupidity or banking or whatever hit. You know, that I know, Randy, you've heard. So I've that has actually been an asset to me going through what we've gone through in the last year, by
Right.
the way, because I've had that experience. So I went through that. Now, I think then that's pretty much gets me really to today in the most part. I mean, I could talk about things further back and some of the things that I've overcome. And I've had a lot of guests, deal with cancer, deal with loss of parents, spouses, friends, and there's been a lot of that around too. But I would say as a warrior, for me, those are the things that I've really had to overcome.
Okay. Good. So I'm going to insert one here, and you can either deal with it in this segment or in the next segment. And I was just curious as to where does Richardson Plano Networkers fit in this equation that you just talked about? Where did you come up with the idea? How did you decide to get it started? And we all know the outcome, and we're all part of that. But you can make a decision. You can either take a break, get a glass of water, and move, and we can do it in the next segment. Up to you, boss.
Well, that's kind of where I am today. So actually, Randy, that's a great question, and we will take a quick break. We'll come back
Okay, good.
with a little bit more Ricky Jean Wright, and then I will start, talking about where I am today and connect the dots, which is a thing if you know me a little bit. We'll connect the dots between what that is and what we're doing today, and um, that story.
Okay,
So let's take a quick break. We'll be right
great.
back, and we'll talk about kind of where I am today.
All right, hang tight, everybody.
All right, we're back with Warrior versus Zombie, and a little different format here, in that I'm having to answer questions about my own warrior journey, and I enjoyed sharing what I did with you. And in future segments, when we do this, the world according to me podcast periodically. We'll be doing it again. But Randy asked the question before we started. So, how does this RPN, if you look at my background, or Be Connected, or any of my networking activities, fit into the story, if you will, or what is it? How did that come about? One of the things I want to clarify is I did not. Richardson Plano Networkers, RPN, was not my idea. That was what I call a divine appointment. I showed up at a meeting, and Lisa Head, there were some other folks, Mark Weber, there's folks that were doing it. There's about 14 people in a room. They're trying to figure out if they're going to stay in existence or what they're going to do. These networking groups, they can be kind of confusing. And I just showed up in the room, and it ultimately became something that I was leading, and I'll explain that in a second. But before I do that, I want to say one of the things I realized after I retired, and even before, and particularly before we were talking with the church and doing all those things,
Hmm.
was that a lot of warriors don't remember or aren't focused and don't have clarity on why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
Simon Sinek says, the whole start with why or whatever. But it's more than that. I think we all have a unique reason, God given, universe
Yep.
given, whatever you want to label it, reason for being on the planet. We all, each of us, like Randy's superpower really is knowing the questions to ask and knowing what question to ask. Mine happens to be abstract conceptualization or the ability to connect the dots. I can see things and connect them in a way. But everybody has their own unique value. We're all different. Doesn't matter if we do similar things, we all have unique value. And then the third thing is if anything were possible, and that's key, where would we go? What would the impact be? And I'll share that with you, or Randy, but don't let me forget in terms of where this goes. But when it comes to Richardson Plano Networkers or Warrior versus Zombie podcast or Be Connected or any of these kinds of things, once we know that, that's what warriors know. But life is a team sport. There's things that we need on our journey because we can't do it all ourselves. I don't care how big or small your business is or how together your life is, we can all benefit from helping each other. And so one of the things I realized as I was going on this journey was building community, building a group of servant leaders, people who come to serve. One of the things you would learn about Be Connected and or Richardson Plano Networkers or anything that you find me spending, any place you find me spending my time with community wise, is the people, the culture of that community is people who show up to serve.
Right.
You show up first. Remember I said make an impact and then make money. If you show up to Richardson Plano Networkers and your only focus is how much money can I extract out of this group,
Right.
you will not stay in the group.
Right.
Because that's not the community that I believe, or we believe, Randy, your other people,
That will actually force people away from you as
Right.
opposed to towards you.
Exactly. So that's the fundamental. So to me, they're two integrated pieces, and I'm spending a lot of time. I spend probably 20 spending. I used my own words incorrectly because I don't ever believe you should spend your time. Obviously, you shouldn't waste your time. Shouldn't spend your time. That's a consumer mentality. We should all be viewing our time, and Randy knows this, this is what I always say, your time is your most valuable asset. If you're not investing your time,
Right.
then you're not going to do it. So that's what Richardson Plano Networkers, that's what Be Connected. And frankly, the reason I'm doing this podcast, and now that we're live in the Hive and promoting our message and promoting our warriors to the Be Connected community, which is a global community, is I feel like this is a way to get people's message out. Not just my message, but the message of the warriors. There's a lot of warriors out there because there's so much noise in the system, so many places you can go, and frankly, we're not in control of it, right? Whether we're in Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, I don't care. Pick the one you like, but if it's not this kind of community where we pay, we keep it going. We pay for Richardson Plano the $2 a week, and we're there. It's not like not for profit, but it's not cost. Like we do that. We pay for the services to Be Connected. It's not coming from advertisers. We're not selling out. We're not looking for investors who say you got to make more money. So those are all fundamentals. Those are the best principles that are applied to this. Does that answer the question, Randy? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean it's complex. I mean the answer is it's not a simple answer,
Right.
and I think that's one of the reasons why people stay with Richardson Plano Networkers is because they get a lot out of it, and they get the opportunity to share their thoughts and their contribution and their value with everybody else.
Yeah, and I think I
And you
love.
taught us that.
Well, I attempt to do it. One of the things I've learned is you can say the same things over and over and over and over and over again to your kids or to your church or to your networking group or to your friends, and somebody else can come in and say exactly the same thing, and they'll get it. So
Right.
part of it is a way to communicate the message in a way that people will understand. And sometimes can see something in my head, but I can't explain it in the words that I use. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted you here to ask questions or clarify, is because it all makes sense to me when I'm
So
listening.
you've made a couple of major shifts in your life, and you've talked to us. Right now, you're at the shift where we got Richardson Plano Networkers. You're always looking for ways to improve that. You're involved in Be Connected. You do other things on the side. If anything were possible, Dave, where do you think you're going from here?
Well, the answer is I'm going to stay on the journey, just like the podcast theme song says. It's not the getting there, it's the journey. So when I talk about if anything were possible, not only with my clients, but with myself, it's what does my ideal day look like? How does that work? And
That
those
was my
kinds of
next
things.
question.
Yeah, so my ideal day includes this. By the way, you all are part of my ideal day. If I have a one-to-one with somebody, it's part of my ideal day because I am retired still. I do design my day. I work out, I make myself available to my family, I take vacations, I do things, but it's, life by design, not by default. And so I basically do that. But if anything were possible, just like I said, I believe my unique reason on the planet is to change the world one dream at a time. So if I could find as many people who have a vision, who have that clarity, who know the value they're adding, and I can become their vision warrior either through the messaging in this podcast, the participation in a networking community, whether it's Be Connected or RP Networkers, whether it's our Monday Mixer, any area where I can have an influence to encourage somebody in some way to fulfill their vision, their dream. Dreams, sometimes people think of that as kind of a, well, yeah, that's a dream. No, I'm saying anything is possible. When I say if anything were possible, you got to understand again, I don't beat people up with this, but I'm a Christian. And the Bible says that with God,
Right.
all things are possible. And therefore, I believe that if you can think it, if you can believe it, if you can design it,
Hmm.
right, then you can make it happen. It may not happen overnight, and it may not happen without a lot of pain because you know what? The thing that amazes me about where we're at today is to survive, to thrive, to be a human being. Everything has both challenge and support. So whether I have to wear a mask, whether I have to deal with a
Right.
virus, you can't run from a virus. You can't run from life. You're always going to have challenge. In fact, if you don't embrace the challenge and overcome the challenge in your life or with anything that's coming into your life, you're not going to be as healthy and thrive like you
Right.
can, right? You've got to fight through it. You've got to work out. You've got to do things. You've got
And
to
then
eat
there's
right.
that old sage, no pain, no gain. So
Absolutely.
that
And it
nobody's
is
going to hand
painful.
this to you. It is
Yeah, and it
painful,
is painful. It
psychologically
is.
painful, physically painful, painful to others around you.
Right. And so one of the things I find, and that's the thing that always amazes me talking to warriors, not just myself, is that everybody realizes afterwards, maybe not when you're going into it, but after the struggle, after the zombies have been encountered, that they made it and they're stronger because of it. Nietzsche says that which does not destroy us makes us stronger. And that's truly that. Well, let's do this. I want to wrap this up. We're kind of at time. We took a little bit. I don't want to. We will do this in future episodes, Randy. This is good. I like this. There's a whole lot more I'd like to share, but I don't want to. I don't want to just wear everybody out here. So let's take another quick break. We're going to come into what I call the land the plane segment. I'll give you the 3 takeaways that I'd like you to take today. And then if Randy, if there's any other things, if you see any chats from anybody or questions that come from the audience, we do have a live audience today. You can ask those questions and I'll answer those. And then I'll tell you how to stay in touch with me, which the easiest thing is if you're not in any of my groups or whatever, to be on Be Connected, but I'll remind you of that at the end. So with that, let's take another quick break. We'll be back with Ricky Jean Wright. Here, the next snippet of It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be back with Warrior versus Zombie. All We are back, and I'm already wore out because I feel like I'm doing both. But Randy, thank you for asking the questions and giving me the opportunity to kind of make this a little more interesting and clarify things. And I truly do appreciate that. Is there anything before I talk about my major takeaways or anything that you've heard in the chat or anything that you'd like to ask me before we
Well,
go
Dave,
into?
put your Swami hat on for a moment. And I mean, you've really told us your life story. And I'm sure, you didn't tell us what you did as a kid or a teenager and how much trouble you got in back in those days. But where do you see you going from here? So let's just say, not to the end of your life, but what's the future look like? Let's call it the near future look like for you, for Richardson Plano networkers, uh, all of the above.
So, first of all, that's a great question, Randy. Thank you. It's kind of if anything were possible, and I already shared that I'm living a version of my ideal day today, but obviously that's not a destination, but it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And in the immediate future, there's a lot of things in my ideal day that revolve around family. For those of you who don't know, I mean, I have 5 children. I have 5 grandchildren, one on a grandson that's going to be born in October. Um, it's very important to me in my ideal day to avail myself to be to my adult children and grandchildren. I mentioned that I think in the check-in that I spent time with my 3 grandchildren who haven't lived in the same state as me for 15 years, and or well, they're not 15 years old, but my daughter and son-in-law, because he's in the military, we haven't been together, and I'm that's obviously today apart. But as I go forward, when it comes to doing specifically, and I know where you're going with my warrior journey, as far as the things that I'm investing my time in today, as far as building community and working with warriors, is the things I would envision that future looking like is warriors who will listen to this podcast or come into my world through divine appointment that have a vision that inspires me, and that I will be spending a little more of my time or my time helping them achieve the vision that they have, which I've done with like my well-being compass and some other things. And then I would say that a growing family. I mean, I have 5 kids, almost 6 grandkids, and my son has just gotten engaged. I've got a daughter that hasn't gotten engaged. So, I mean, I've still only got 6 grandkids, and I've got 5 kids. So the numbers could start growing. And so I would say going forward, I will still be managing a good part of my retirement in working with my family and doing what I can. The thing is, you're a parent, Randy, and I know there are a lot of warriors here, and there's no barriers between our lives when we really get real. Authentically, we all are complete as entrepreneurs, small business owners. Our family, our friends, our health, our wealth, all of those things intermingle. And so, if anything were possible, I would do as much as I can to basically support each of my children and my grandchildren on their journey, as well as those who've invested their time in me. And thank you, Randy, for investing your time in me. Thank you, Jason and Jennifer, everybody that's in this audience today, and anybody that watches this because or listens to it, because to me that is the return. If you take what you're hearing today or any one of these podcasts and apply it to your life, and it moves you through something or down the road, then to me that's had an impact. And I want to impact millions. And you say, how can you impact millions? This is a way. This is part of the way. You get your message out and you start, and it's a day at a time. Be present in today. So what other question? Any other questions?
When you look at your journey, what one or two warrior most valuable lessons have you learned on your journey that you feel you'd like to share with us today?
Okay, so I've got 3, and I learned this early on. I said, first started when I was doing the podcast, and I said, give me one, and no warrior has ever just given me one. And I've had as many as 5 or 6, and I'm not going to beat you up with that. You'll hear more down the road. But one of the things I hear very prevalently now with even with warriors, and doesn't mean that just because we're warriors doesn't mean we're not susceptible to the
Right.
same things, is people talk about their feelings. They say, I feel like things are getting worse. I feel like things are getting better. And one of the things is we feel what we focus on. So one of the things I would tell people, if you're feeling something that doesn't seem to be, as an entrepreneur, as an individual, you're feeling something that's not serving you. Maybe it's making you anxious. Maybe it's making you question your business. Maybe it's a relationship issue. It could be anything. Think about the second thing is be self-observant, self-aware. Don't just feel it and keep moving, but use your frontal lobe and engage your mind and think about why you're feeling. What is it that you're focused on at that point in time that's causing you? Because there is a causal. What is it? What is it doing? That's the second thing. The other thing is we all as warriors to keep moving forward, we need to move forward with faith rather than fear. In today's world, there's a whole lot of people, zombie masters as I call them, that want us to move forward and rely on them to keep us from being fearful. And I'm not labeling anybody. I'm just saying there's a lot of that. If you look at that energy, if you listen to the media, if you listen to our government, some government officials, either side, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of people wanting you to take action not based upon faith and your intention, but based upon they want you to be fearful or their fear, right? And neither one of those are right. So faith versus fear. Operate always on faith versus fear. And then the last one that I wanted to leave with, because I deal with this very regularly today, is there's a lot of anxiety, social anxiety, health anxiety, many relationship. There's a lot of things out there. And the one simple thing, and this sounds very simple, but it's every warrior I've ever interviewed and myself have learned, action overcomes anxiety. So take action. Even if it seems like it's worthless or it's hopeless or whatever, because even if it's a small action, even if it's making the bed, going to work out, calling a friend, just doesn't have to be focused on the thing that you feel is making you
Just
anxious.
do something.
Do something, because action overcomes fear. Action overcomes anxiety. So those are the three things that
Those are great,
like.
David. Those are great. Not surprising from knowing you for a while, but I think good to hear. And the good thing about what we're doing here, recording this, is that it doesn't matter if there's one or two people on now, but this will be rebroadcast and other
Right.
people will begin to see it. So on that point, right, how can the current and new audiences find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, the first thing is that if you're not part of Be Connected, get part of Be Connected. And you say, well, I know you're on LinkedIn. I'm connected to you on LinkedIn. I know you're on Facebook, connecting on. I know you're in Richardson Plano Network. I'm connected to you that way. This is almost, if you want to really connect and get a quality connection with me through Be Connected, and it doesn't cost you anything. There, you can have a Be United membership, which has benefits to it, in addition to being in the community, promoting yourself, promoting your message, those kinds of things. So be part of Be Connected. That's the first thing. The second thing is this podcast, whether it's audio or live in the Hive and Be Connected, is going to be every week. You can follow back up with me there. And I run my life by divine appointments. So if you reach out to me on Be Connected, especially, or as a result of this podcast, as some people know, because I just connected with them in the last few days, I'm going to connect with you. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn, probably not. I get 35 connection requests and people want to meet with me every day. and I can't filter those. They may be good. You may be as good there as you are and Be Connected, but I don't have the time to sort
Right.
through that.
Right.
Time is my most valuable asset. So that's what I would say. And then
Okay.
just stay tuned in. This show is going to keep going, and I'm always looking for new warriors. So with that, I think, Randy, what I'm going to do, I think we've kind of gotten to a land the plane place. So I want to
Sounds good.
again remind everybody we do this every week. If you're a warrior and you'd like to get your message out, don't really monetize this program or this show in a specific way. So, but I want to promote you. I want to get the warriors. Get their word out, get their message, and there's other people in Be Connected as well that I want to expose you to. So with that, thank you, Randy. Appreciate you doing this. Kind of found our way through it. It was good. Thanks for those in the audience that have chosen to join us today. Thanks for Rob and Matt and Jason and Jennifer and those that have joined in. I really do appreciate you joining us live, and we'll be back next week with Warrior versus Zombie. Next week, by the way, I just give you a teaser. Doug Grady is going to be joining us, and he's going to be talking about his world. And he wrote a book called The Ripple Effect, and he's been a guest on Warrior versus Zombie last year, and a lot has evolved in his world since then. And so I can't wait to have a discussion with him.
If you missed him in person when David had him on the group, don't miss next week.
Yeah. Thanks, you. Appreciate it. Everybody have a beautiful day, and let's hear one more snippet of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There with Warrior versus Zombie.